Seen a lot of sad things on the news recently. A lot of sad things involving housing. I mean, shit, there's always sad things on the news, right? But specifically involving tenants and housing and problems that homeowners are having with tenants. And sometimes, I watch these problems and I'm like, God damn, how stupid are you? But I take a step back and I realize not everybody has that training. Not everybody has the experience. You take a typical homeowner who's rented out a few rooms, how many tenants do you think they've gone through? 5, maybe 6. My parents, they rented their whole lives. How many tenants do you think I saw? 5, maybe 6. I've had over 1,000 tenants. I've done this thousands of times. I've seen every scenario. I've had it all done to me. I've lived it, been doing it for 10 years, and I'm still here. It wasn't easy, but I'm still here. You gotta be careful. There is nothing wrong if you're a homeowner and you're renting out a room for some extra income. There is nothing wrong with that. You are well within your rights. Hell, people have been doing that since before I was born. It's a thing. Lodging, housing, it's changed over time. Back then you would go to bars and taverns and you can get a bed and some breakfast or some food there. That was the housing they had. Then they had like bed and breakfast, then they had like motels. Now it's Airbnb. It's evolutionized, but it also hasn't changed. And what hasn't changed is, one of the things hasn't changed is the renter, the tenant. The tenant hasn't changed, okay? When you're inviting someone into your house, you're inviting a tenant into your house. You gotta be careful. You gotta set boundaries. You gotta keep them in line. You gotta keep them in check. But you also are taking on a responsibility. It's a two-way street. You're providing housing, taking on that responsibility, and they're being a tenant. So it's an agreement that you guys have. I agree that I'm providing you something, you agree you will pay. Sometimes the tenant will stop paying because, and people ask you like, well, what do you do if the tenant stops paying? Why did they stop paying? Why did they stop paying? There's always a reason the tenants stop paying, okay? The tenants, most of the time, they're professional manipulators. That's what I mean. The tenant is hungry. The tenant doesn't have the experience that you do. The tenant doesn't have the opportunities that you have. The tenant doesn't have the background that you do, okay? The tenant doesn't have a place to stay. He's got one set of clothes. He's got one job. He will fuck you up if you let him, okay? There are things put in place that prevent him from fucking you up, preventing her from fucking you up. And I'm gonna teach you, and you have to follow them to protect yourself. So back to the question, what do you do if tenants stop paying? Why did they stop paying? Most of the time because something's broken. Electricity, plumbing, some kind of defect in the home, in the space that you're providing. You agreed you would provide it, you hadn't fixed it, or you haven't provided it. Obviously they're gonna stop paying. It's just a trick that they do. Remember, the tenant is surrounded by a bunch of other fucking losers who are telling them, oh, you got tenant rights, you can do this, you can do that. It's kind of like when you meet a hot girl at a bar and she's got to go and ask 5 of her friends for fucking confirmation if she can talk to you or not. She's unable to make her own fucking decisions. The tenant is no different. Okay, the tenant has 5-10 people that they're talking to that are advising him. That's why they're tenants. Okay, if they were leaders, they'd be owning something. They're not leaders. You are the leader. You are leading. But to be a leader, you have to take care of the people that you lead. Being a leader is not just, oh, I'll kick my feet up and everybody pay me. Being the boss is hard. It's hard to be the boss, okay? You gotta be tough to be a boss. You gotta be able to say no to people. You gotta be able to put your foot down. It's not for little boys and girls, okay? This is fucking grown person shit. So, another thing that you wanna have, very importantly, is have a lease. When you move someone into your house, I don't care if you're renting out a bedroom to them, you will create a lease. I could show you how to do it. I'll make it another video because it's long. But very important that you have a lease. This lease is the lease agreement. This is your main weapon. If you don't have a lease, you might as well have just brought this person in for free. You have to have a lease always, okay? Doesn't matter if you're just renting out a couch. You put on the lease that it's just the couch. And on the lease, there's always, you want to get like the ones that are pre-filled in. Like I said, I'll talk about that. But there are specific rules on that lease. And you may think they're kind of silly, but they will all pertain to you and they will all apply to you. And they're all very important. All these specific rules. So you have to go one by one. So when you move somebody into the property and you're going into your house and you're going through the lease one by one, a lot of tenants, most of the time, will play the stupid tenant game where they'll try to interrupt you. You're reading them a freaking lease and they'll try to say, every time you say something, they'll want to say something. And what you need to do is you need to tell them, stop. Stop interrupting me because this is going to take forever because it's a lot of items. If you're gonna get confrontational, and don't tell them this, but this is what I'm telling you, is that if you're gonna get confrontational with the tenant, now is the time to do it. That moment when they're signing the lease. That is the moment to do it. Don't wait until like, oh, I'll just deal with it, and then it keeps going, and then you're dealing with it, and then you can't deal with it anymore, and you snap. And that's when it gets really ugly. That's when you get into a domestic violence situation. That's when you have somebody living in your house that's not paying the rent, that's abusing the thing, that's fucking high on drugs, walking around 3 o'clock in the morning, that's bringing all sorts of people to your house. It's horrible, the stories that I'm seeing. Imagine if you had a home, you worked so hard, you brought somebody in to get a little extra income, and now you're forced to leave while this person who hasn't fucking done anything in their fucking life, and now they're living free in your house that you fucking work for from the sweat of your brow. Oh, I'd lose my shit. Believe me, I will lose my fucking shit. I will fucking be in jail. I will lose my shit. If you need to remain calm. I talk about in this channel that you need to always remain calm and composed when you're dealing with tenants. So I understand it's perfectly understandable that you'll get frustrated and angry and you'll want to kill this person. But I implore you that if you're following what I'm telling you, it should never even get to that point, honestly. Okay? It would never, if you were following everything that I'm telling you, it would never get to that point where you're losing your shit like that and you want to kill somebody. That doesn't make no sense. Why would it get to that point? If you don't follow what I'm telling you and it gets to that point, I understand why you would get into a position where you feel so helpless that you feel that violence is the only answer. And if you are in that position, I'd tell you to start fucking praying. Start fucking praying, okay? Because the only person who can help you in that situation is God, okay? Because you fucked up so bad that now this person is living in your house, they're not paying, you can't pay your mortgage, you're out of your house, you're on the freaking street, and there's no end in sight, and now you're thinking, okay, well, what if I beat this person up? You failed. You completely failed. Start fucking praying, okay? Don't let it get to that point. Be careful who you bring in. Follow a lease. If they ever stop paying, that's the other thing, I give them a notice. When they stop paying, if they ever miss their rent or anything, remember, rent is due on the 1st, late on the 5th, okay? So if they ever stop paying, you got to put a letter on their door on the 5th saying that the rent is late and you owe late fee. And make sure you include that on your lease too, that there's a late fee, okay? You can do a whole tenancy and not once speak to your tenants. It can all be on paper. You can do it like that. Okay? But don't let it get so bad that you're like these people on the news. Like I saw a person on the news. This lady's living in their house. She ran the water for like 3 days or something, fucked up the whole house. These guys are out on the street. The son is on the news crying. And I understand. I totally get you because you don't have the training. You feel helpless. You're gonna feel helpless. You're gonna feel like, what the fuck I'm gonna do? And you might call the police. You might. But what the fuck are they gonna do? They don't get involved in the tenant-landlord situation. They can give you some advice, but they're not gonna kick that person out. So what are you gonna do? If you call police and nothing happens, you're gonna feel helpless. Start praying. Believe me, God can help you. And watch these videos, that too.